Hello and welcome to my channel. Bonsoir et bienvenue sur ma chaîne. My name is Muriel and this evening I will be doing what I'm going to call a combined/dual review of both Ringworld by Larry Niven and Rendezvous with Rama by Sir Arthur C. Clarke. Now, the reason I decided to do it this way is twofold. First, I didn't think I had enough material to do a separate review for Rendezvous with Rama. And second, since both of these novels fall within the subcategory of science fiction known as the big dumb object, a category I just learned recently existed, in fact, well, I thought, why not take this opportunity to, well, do a review and also compare the two novels with one another. So that's what I'm going to do. First, I'll start with some relevant background information. So, Rendezvous with Rama was written in 1973 by the famed Sir Arthur C. Clarke, a great name in science fiction, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. So the story is about a gigantic object which enters the solar system. That's really it. This object turns out to be a massive spacecraft and is christened Rama by the humans interested in figuring out what it's all about, really. They've determined that it seems to simply be going through the solar system, but ultimately no one is really sure, and so a team of spatial explorers is sent to investigate further. Then we have Ringworld, written by Larry Niven in 1970. Now, in this novel, you have a somewhat similar premise. I would say, right off the bat, the world building is a wee bit more complex. So humans have colonized several planets, have come into contact with other sentient alien species, there's trade between them, there's been wars between them, and one of those species, called Pearson's puppeteers, are migrating from their home location, and during this migration, they stumble across a massive artificial planet shaped like a ring, and they're like, well, who built this? Is the technology usable? Are there still people living there? Like, big question mark, right? So they sort of manipulate things and get a team of two humans, a Xin, which is an alien that looks like a giant anthropoid tiger, and one of said Pearson's puppeteers to investigate this ring world. So you can see there are parallels between the two stories for that specific element. As usual, I'm going to talk a bit about the writing, or at least the impressions the writing left me with. In the case of Rendezvous with Rama, it was well written, very streamlined style of writing, I would say. I mean, of course, I'm never good at describing writing, but it was clean, elegant, but nothing extremely flowery or elaborate either. It did the job, basically. It did manage to convey, all at the massive object that is Rama and, the wonder experienced by the explorers. I really felt that when I was reading the book, and, it's good English, and that's about it. In the case of Ringworld, again, it's pretty similar. Like, it's nothing wow with the expressions or the turns of phrases. It's decently written, though I think in the case of Ringworld, there's a more modern vibe to it, or maybe not modern, but more action-filled vibe to it. Like, I felt I was more in a space romp than a space exploration story, like I was with Rendezvous with Rama. So that was the main difference to me. Like, it's more adventurous in a way. It's also a bit more tongue-in-cheek. Like, I think there's more humor, but that's also because of the interactions between the characters, and the characters are a bit more complex, and the world building is a bit more complex than in Rendezvous with Rama. So I think that all plays into this. So yeah, in both cases, it's well written. I think with Rendezvous with Rama, there's that classic, clean English feel to it. Maybe I'm just reading way too much into this because Sir Arthur C. Clarke was British. And here it's more space agey, like, entertainment science fiction, but not in a negative way. That's just the impression I was left with. So like I said, both novels feature stories about a big dumb object, hence the point of doing a dual review, right? So in the case of Rendezvous with Rama, that's basically it. It's a story of exploration, of trying to understand something which is fundamentally not understandable by human minds, or just very difficult to grasp for a human mind. I really like that vibe personally. Straight up exploration. There's not much character development, though I'll get back to that in a second. And there's also a subtle note of melancholia at the end of the book, because without spoiling the ending, you feel that the characters have to learn to accept certain things and let go of certain things because, well, like I said, some things you just can't know about the universe and what might be out there. With regards to world building, so the interesting thing about this, it was all realistic. Humans have colonized a few other planets in the solar system, such as Mars, or, surprisingly enough, Mercury. Like, how does that work? And they're even looking into colonizing Venus. Good luck with that one. And the moon is also colonized, so there's a bit of cultural divergence between the different human beings, and they form together a coalition of planets, and they all want to understand what Rama is all about. They're very invested in it, especially the Hermians. That was really cool. They don't call them Mercurians, they call them Hermians because, well, Hermes, Mercury. So that was neat. In the case of Ringworld, I think the story's a bit more complex. Doesn't mean it's better though, I'll get back to that. But it's a bit more complex. So obviously there's this huge element of we're going to explore the Ringworld. What is it? Who built it? Is it still inhabited? Etc. But I mean, it's also about the interactions between the characters. There's more exchange between the characters. There's a bit more characterization in and of itself as well, though it's not without its flaws. Again, I'll get back to that. So yeah, there's a bit of a character study going on and exploring the differing psychologies of different alien species, things like that. As to the world building, that is also a lot more complex. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a lot, but it is more complex than that which you find in Rendezvous with Rama, because, as I already mentioned, you have human beings who have colonized several other planets, and then you have all these other alien species. The two who are most prominently featured are the Xin, which look like, as I said, big anthropomorphized tigers. They are big bad carnivores and very warmongering, etc. And you have the Pearson's puppeteers, which I have to admit is one of the more original alien species I've come across so far in literature. They actually kind of reminded me of those funny creatures you find in his Dark Materials, which is a work of fantasy, I know, and I can't remember their names, but it kind of reminded me of that because they're very weird, they're very different. That was cool. But there are also other alien species peripherally mentioned, and there's a lot of exploration of futuristic technology, obviously, and alien technology, and comparing the different kinds of space drives you can have. Like, there's a lot of technical science-based terms, and I think the author is either a mathematician or a physicist, so he knows his stuff, obviously. So getting into the thick of it, let's talk about the characters. Now, I think one of the weak points of Rendezvous with Rama, and I've read this tends to be a thing in general with Arthur C. Clarke's novels, though, I mean, I can't really judge because this is the only one I've read by him so far. The characters aren't developed that much. There isn't much characterization to speak of at all. The main character, I would say, in this novel is Captain or Commander Norton, and he is the leader of the crew sent to explore Rama. And he's, what can you say? He's confident, adventurous, determined to explore and understand Rama. He's awed by the massive spacecraft. I mean, he has the qualities of a good leader, basically. They mention that he's married to 2 women. Multiple marriages are a thing in this particular version of future human history. And from the little I could read, there's also a man married to another man and a woman. So that was pretty progressive and forward-thinking of Arthur C. Clarke, I think. But yeah, I mean, he talks about his family a bit, but he's just a good leader. He's inquisitive, and members of his team are also somewhat described. There is a woman, and she's the doctor or biologist, and there's a guy who explores a bit further than the others, and he shows a lot of bravery in the face of obstacles and hardship. Then you have like a consortium of a variety of scientists and representatives / ambassadors from the various planets. humans inhabit in the future. They feature an anthropologist, a physicist, an astronomer, etc. And they talk about Rama and what might happen and how to warn the crew of Commander Norton, etc. It's all pretty surface level stuff. It doesn't go into any depth or detail. But it was alright. One tiny thing I will mention, just for the sake of it. So there's a certain paragraph where Commander Norton goes into a weird description of what it would be like to see women's breasts in space. Okay, so it was really weirdly, it's one of these things that you would find on a forum called Men Writing Women. It's all the weirder considering that Arthur C. Clarke was gay, so I guess it's men writing men perceiving women. It was a bit, I was like, alright, this is interesting, I suppose. It was not necessary at all, because the guy says, women's breasts would be going like this in space. I'm like, that's just the weirdest random thought. Did you really need to put that in there? So that's about it for the characters in Rendezvous with Rama. It's decent, but it doesn't go into any real characterization, really. Now, in the case of the Ringworld, I think this is better. There is more characterization and a greater focus on the characters in the thoughts, on the characters' relationships with one another, on the psychology of human characters and alien characters. How do they differ? How are they similar? Etc. That being said, it's not great either. It's still pretty basic overall. The main character is called Louis Wu, and he is a 200-year-old man. Let's see, in this version of our future, humans are able to take something called booster spice, and this can, elongate a human being's lifespan quite significantly, I might add, and keep them healthy as well, and looking young. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be 200 years old and look like a decrepit mummy, am I right? So Louis Wu looks like he's 30, but he's 200. And again, he's like the adventurous type. The author never really says what his job is supposed to be, or like what his vocation is supposed to be. He takes sabbaticals and goes off into space by himself to explore meteoroid mines and stuff like that. I was like, alright. Adventurous, confident, reasonably intelligent, I guess. He is described as a xenophile, so he enjoys spending time with alien species and hanging out with them, partying with them, whatever, interacting with them and trying to figure out how their minds work. So there is this curiosity to him, and obviously has an understanding of physics because he has these discussions with the other crew members, so alright. But it doesn't go into that much detail either. Then I'll get to the two aliens in the crew that goes exploring the Ringworld. You have Speaker to Animals, who is a Xin, the big tiger man. Well, his culture is all about doing war and being aggressive and dominating and eating other animals than alien species. It's like the reign of the carnivore, and it's called the patriarchy because in his species, females are not sentient. And I was like, alright. Interesting concept. The females are not sentient and they're enslaved, and that's how they reproduce and perpetuate their species. I'm like, cool. So only the males interact with other species in the universe, and he's a Xin, so he's all about that brawn. At least at first glance, he's actually not that stereotypical, despite what you would picture with a giant tiger human thing, right? He's actually pretty thoughtful. He is part of an ambassadorial group to humans, so he does have a few diplomatic skills and knows how to interact with other alien species and refrain from violently dismembering them and things like that. So there's actually a bit of nuance to him, weirdly enough. And then you have Nessus. Nessus is probably the weirdest character. That's also because he's one of the weirdest aliens I've ever come across. Like I said, he's a puppeteer. Now, puppeteers are the exact opposite of Xin. They are herbivores, but extremely intelligent herbivores. Imagine like a deer with 3 legs, and then you've got a big bump, or hump, at the front of the back. That's where the brain is encased, and then up from that come 2 necks, topped by 2 pseudo heads with a big eye, and a mouth. And the mouth has like digits on it that act like hands. Very strange. I actually want to draw one because it's so weird. And the characteristic of puppeteers is that they're scared of everything. They are, like I said, herbivores and herd animals, and as such, well, it's been evolutionarily advantageous for them to be cowards and to anticipate any kind of danger. And he's a bit of an exception. He's qualified as insane by the rest of his society because he actually wants to go explore the Ringworld and recruit a human and a Xin, etc. So he's considered crazy, even bipolar, because he's got periods of intense activity and enthusiasm followed by periods of deep despair and anxiety. It's like, all right, why not? Bipolar representation via an alien. Why not? So Nasus is scared of a lot of things. At the same time, he displays bravery. But see, the thing about the Pearson's puppeteers is that they're incredibly manipulative. Without going into any kind of spoiler, they've messed around with other species and done some ethically questionable things because they're so scared of getting killed or hurt or, maimed and stuff that they want to anticipate any potential danger way down the line, and so they orchestrate things. So there's almost a sociopathic vibe to the species and Nasus because they feel absolutely no remorse about it. Like, it's purely cold calculation to ensure survival, but obviously it doesn't come across that well to the humans and the Xin as well. But it did make for interesting interactions between the characters. And finally we come to Tila Brown, the fourth member of the crew. Ooh, yeah. There were problems there. Tila Brown is female. She's a young 19 to 20-year-old woman and is selected for the mission because she's supposed to be incredibly lucky. In an almost psychic way, she's got psychic luck. This was a very weird part of the story, which I'm going to come back to, that didn't make much sense, honestly. And she falls in love with Louis Wu, and okay, to put it bluntly, there's lots of random, pointless sex scenes. I'm not a prude. I am not adverse to sexy fun times in literature. If it's motivated, if there's a reason for it, but in this case, it was just so bloody random. I was like, really? Really? Like, having sex in floaty beds on a spaceship just because, and I'm like, okay, I mean, the guy who is 200 years old and she's 19 to 20, and I was like, I have nothing against age difference relationships, honestly, but I was like, even this is a bit much for me, mate. Like, really? Really? And she falls in love with him, conveniently enough. I mentioned in my February reading wrap-up, there's a point where she's sold. And I mean, there's a serious problem with female characterization in this book, and it did affect my enjoyment of the story, sadly enough. Like, I'm not usually super sensitive to that kind of thing, but like I said, even for me, it was a bit much. See, the thing is, she's portrayed as intelligent because she grasps complicated physics concepts and, technical terms about the spaceship drive and the technology involved in creating and maintaining the Ringworld. But at the same time, she's incredibly naive. And it's somewhat justified because there's this thing going on with her luck and that she's never been hurt by anything, so obviously she wouldn't have that experiential background. But still, it wasn't convincing. On the one hand, she's incredibly naive, borderline stupid for small practical things, but she can understand higher astrophysics. I was like, no, I don't know what you're doing there, mate. Now, when it comes to the themes, this is going to be pretty simple for Rendezvous with Rama. Like I said, it is a straightforward story about exploring the spacecraft that is Rama. And that's it. So the main theme, besides, this general sense of exploration, is facing the unknown and the potentially unknowable. And coming to terms with that. Learning to accept that there are certain things we just cannot understand and will never truly grasp in its entirety. And for what it was, it worked superbly well. I thoroughly enjoyed this. When it comes to Ringworld, you obviously have that theme as well. You have the Ringworld, and what the hell is this thing? Where did it come from? Who built it? And you do get some answers in the book, so that's always a good thing in my book. So that's similar to Rendezvous with Rama, but I would say it goes further because it's on a much, much grander scale. Rama is a ginormous spacecraft, alright? And the humans are puny, faced with it, and you have these incredible vistas and this weird technology that they have to try and figure out. And I was sucked in. But with Ringworld, we're talking about a structure that is equivalent to, I'm getting it wrong, but just bear with me, like 1,000 times the surface of planet Earth, you know, orbiting an actual star. This thing is massive. Everything about it is massive. Even the width of the ring is greater than the surface of planet Earth, and then it goes in a gigantic circle around the star. And it's powered by plates orbiting the star. Like I said, there's mention of a Dyson sphere, and if you know what a Dyson sphere is, they explain that this ring would be a compromise between an organic, natural, spherical planet and a Dyson sphere system. It's actually almost a little hard to imagine because of the scale, but it's truly awe-inspiring. Like, I was picturing, you know, this ginormous thing orbiting a star in space, and with the big void of space and stars surrounding it. It would look great in a high-budget CGI movie, actually. But yeah, I mean, it's that kind of thing. I actually vaguely thought of Interstellar, the movie, which I didn't enjoy for the story, but I did enjoy, like, the physics of it and the effects of it. Kind of reminded me of that. Just the sheer grandeur of it is pretty mind-boggling. And then you also have these sub-themes. There's a lot of things said about overpopulation. Overpopulation and the responses different species have or have had to it is a running sub-theme of this novel, I would say. And incidentally, that's a theme that I find very interesting and one I think about a lot, just, you know, for human beings on planet Earth and our future. So I like seeing it explored in fiction. And you also have, like, a running conversation about probability and statistics and this thing about luck. So the probability aspect is fine. I'm not a fan of maths, but ironically, probability was my favorite part of it. But then it runs into this psychic luck thing with Tila Brown, that she's been selected genetically to be extremely preternaturally lucky, and this has preserved her from any and all harm, which would normally befall most human beings. But it was so weird and clunky. It didn't make much sense. I don't think it added that much to the story, but ironically, some of the story's twists rely in a major way on that thing. It didn't really work for me. It was just so weird. You also have a sub-theme of, you know, the ethics of manipulating populations. Like, it's, you know, actually, yeah, it is kind of similar to eugenics, but okay, hear me out. Without going into any details, I said the Pearson's puppeteers, because they're so freaked out by everything and want to anticipate any and all potential danger, they've been messing about with other species' evolutionary pathways. And in a way, that's, I guess, a form of eugenics. Like, they're actually shaping the selection process for entire peoples. I mean, sentient species in this particular case. Yeah, ethically, it's a bit questionable. Eugenics might not be the right word. You get what I mean, but that was an interesting bit of food for thought. So in the end, you might think that given what I've said about Ringworld and how it's more complex with regards to its themes and even its characterization, I might have overall preferred it to Rendezvous with Rama, but not quite. Actually, I gave both of these novels on Goodreads 3 stars out of 5, but in my mind, I rate books out of 10, and even sometimes out of 20. Blame my school and university days for that. So actually, I gave 7 out of 10 to Rendezvous with Rama and 6 out of 10 to Ringworld. Because while Rendezvous with Rama is, I think, overall a simpler story, it just works for what it is. It's pretty flawless for what it tries to do. I mean, there's that weird bit with space boobs, but I'll forgive him that. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, the characters aren't that well developed, but the characters aren't the point of the story. The point of the story is this immense spacecraft and puny humans trying to figure it out. And it works. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I would definitely try something else by Arthur C. Clarke, just off of the overwhelmingly good impression I had from reading Rendezvous with Rama. With Ringworld, the issue is that while I enjoyed the concept of, well, the Ringworld itself and the varying sub-themes, such as the possible reactions to overpopulation and how future civilizations could respond to it. There was just that nagging problem with the characters, and especially the female characterization. I just could not really get over it. Tila Brown as a character just does not make sense, and her whole subplot, which does turn out to be pretty important, of psychic luck and how it's affecting probabilities of everything that's happening, it was just not convincing. It was incredible. And I didn't even touch upon some of the other cringy things, like they encounter a lone female survivor on the Ringworld, and minor spoiler warning, she turned out to be a space courtesan. I'll say courtesan more than like simple prostitute because it's somewhat more involved, I guess. And no shame on courtesans, right? Like, that's not my problem. Like, why did she have to be so sexualized? And of course she sleeps with the main human character. Like, obviously they have this amazing sex, but it was just so random as well. And Louis Wu, 200-year-old guy, I don't care that he looks like 30, okay? I really don't. He's 200 years old, and he sleeps with a 20-year-old naive little woman. I was like, oh, come on, dude, really? Must we go there? Must we go there? I don't think so. The random sex scenes were just, like, they were so random and cringy. Why did you have to do that? It was not necessary. I was just fine exploring the ring world and going through the fun, cool physics stuff. Why did you have to take that particular route? A bit disappointing. On the subject of sex and orgasms, I will say that the puppeteers have this thing called a TASP, and it can actually manipulate the pleasure center in the brain of other alien species, and so that's their own form of mind control. And I did think that was actually pretty original, so props to that. But otherwise, yeah, I really wish those things were in there, or just tone down just a wee bit between Tila Brown and the space courtesan / prostitute, and just Louis Wu having a time of his life, getting his rocks off with all these human women while exploring the amazing world. I was like, yeah, no. That's why in the end, even though the story is a bit more complex, and I did think the scale of the big dumb object was grander, and as a result, I felt even more awed by what I was picturing in my mind, and have these cool alien species. Overall, I think Rendezvous with Rama as a self-contained story is better, hence my rating for both of these novels. And that was my dual/combined review for both Rendezvous with Rama by Sir Arthur C. Clarke and Ringworld by Larry Niven. I hope you found this somewhat different format interesting. I thought it was cool to compare the two because they both have as their central theme or idea the big dumb object. I thought that was pretty cool. In fact, I'd be interested in reading another work of science fiction that is centered around that theme, and I've seen a couple of things that might interest me in the future. Please do share your thoughts if you've read either or both of these novels. I'm always eager to geek out over SFF literature with other people. In the meantime, I hope you have a lovely day or evening, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye!